Welcome to the Power of Propaganda, an exhibit co-curated by myself, Steve Norris, and Rachel Makarowski here in King Library. It's an exhibit designed to showcase the 25-year relationship between the Havighurst Center for East European, Russian, and Eurasian Studies and the Havighurst Special Collections here in King Library. King Library has an amazing collection of Russian language materials, some of which were donated by the first ever Russian language instructor here at Miami University, Andrei Desantra, some of which were purchased through this partnership between the Havighurst Center and Havighurst Special Collections. Power Propaganda focuses not just on 20th century Soviet propaganda, but anti-Soviet propaganda, as well as the reactions to some of the propaganda produced in the Soviet Union, some of the strengths of the more recent purchases made by the Havighurst Center and Havighurst Special Collections. I think for me personally, my favorite piece of propaganda that's been here from the beginning of this relationship and that was donated by Andrei Desantra is the book 17 Portraits by Yuri Annenkov. Annenkov was a prominent early Soviet artist who was more of an avant-garde artist, and he got a commission in 1924, the year Lenin died, to portray 12 prominent Bolsheviks at the time. This is a pretty plum commission to get in 1924. He drew 17 portraits of 12 individuals that he thought were important within the Soviet Union at the time. 2 of them are Leon Trotsky, 4 are Grigory Zinoviev, and the other one you see here on display is Vsevolod Myrhov, the famous theater director. The problem for Annenkov, and the reason I like this piece so much, is that while this was propagandistic by 1924 and 25 standards, when the book was published in 1926, Annenkov had already fled to Paris, and the style of art that he represented had already been declared out of favor with the regime. The other problem for Annenkov is that none of the 12 people he portrayed were Joseph Stalin. In fact, most of the people in this book were later purged or died under mysterious circumstances. It's a nice comparison to another piece of propaganda I like right across the way here that was overseen by Stalin and Stalin's attempt to write his own version of history, where he inserted himself in all the events that aren't portrayed in 17 Portraits. Across the way you can see Stalin's first meeting with Lenin, which is imagined as this momentous event, and was part of the way that the Stalin estate rewrote the history of the early Soviet Union. You see so wonderfully displayed here in 17 Portraits. There's a lot more to enjoy in this exhibit. Please do so.
Hi, my name is Rachel Makarowski. I'm one of the co-curators for The Power of Propaganda, which is an exhibition created to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Havighurst Center and the relationship of it with the Miami University libraries, particularly the Walter Havighurst Special Collections and University Archives. It's been such a wonderful experience to get to work with not only my co-curator, Dr. Norris, but also Lynn Stevens, who helped a lot with the graphic design. Together we selected the various items, trying to make sure that not only would it be understandable to an audience who maybe doesn't know as much Russian, but also ones that really are emblematic of the different methods and power that these images and propaganda had. I hope that folks enjoy the exhibition while it's up.
Well, I mean, this is one of the great things about Miami is we have this space, special collections, and a lot of the stuff that we have connected to Russian and Soviet culture was actually basically located in Europe by Andrei de Santra, who also created the Russian program at Miami, and I taught his grandson back in 2004, 2005. I've been up here a lot, but I'm always surprised and I always see new things, and it's actually great that Dr. Norris was here because he has quite literally written the book on Russian and Soviet propaganda. So it's also very nice to see so many of our students here. And I'm really grateful for that the libraries are continuing to offer this. I'm seeing some things. For instance, I saw a lot of issues of Soviet life that I remember being given to me by people when I went to the Soviet Union in 1987. And one of the interesting things about a lot of the propaganda posters is you don't need to be able to read Russian, right, to get the message. And I was talking with Rachel Makarowski, who's one of the librarians, who talked about visual literacy and how you can understand the images. So one of my favorite things to do with students who can't read Russian is to bring them up here and I say, think about it, you're a peasant who can't read, and then they can decode the message that the Soviet Union is using as propaganda. So
I think the thing that resonated most with me is the propaganda that was spread in the Soviet Union about anti-US sentiments, of how there's bomb threats, peace threats, everything threats to the Soviet way of life and ideology. I think that's really interesting in contrast to how they built up their own society of it's for the worker, for the common folk. And I think it's very interesting, the dichotomy ideologies of those two.
One thing that I thought was interesting was the magazines that were traded back and forth between the US and the Soviet Union. So like they gave us Soviet Life and we gave them one called America. And it just kind of makes me wonder like the historical narratives that have been like perpetuated, like how much people really read it, like was it effective? And like how the United States chose to portray ourselves to the Soviet Union, what we thought was important to, like, I guess just convince people that life in the United States was superior, and vice versa with the Soviet Union.
Over here is anti-Bolshevik propaganda. So in most of the room it's Soviet propaganda, but this one display is it's mostly from the White Army, which I think is interesting in the way it stands out. I was just weekend before last in Seacliff on Long Island, where I saw the Wrangel house, and I noticed there's a little pamphlet here for General Wrangel. He was one of the White Army leaders. So these things still, a lot of emigres went to Europe, and some of them, Wrangel's daughter who lived in Seacliff, Long Island. A lot of this carried over even into the United States, but the type of pamphlets we have here are really rare. I mean, I've never seen them anywhere else before. It's a very unusual kind of material that we have that for learning about the Civil War time period and what was actually happening on the ground and the types of propaganda the whites were trying to use against the Bolsheviks. This is a unique collection.